welcome Mr. Gary Fenlon, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for State Development, Employment and Industrial Relations, distinguished guests, international speakers and visitors, local developers, ladies and gentlemen. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you all to this, our inaugural Gain Connect Asia Pacific Conference. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and secondly, thank you all for making the effort to come to this, our major industry conference, held for the first time in Brisbane. This conference is a landmark event for this industry as it brings together for the first time developers and industry players from across the Asia Pacific, the US, the UK and New Zealand. We're particularly pleased to welcome our Asia Pacific guests from China, Japan, Korea, India and Singapore. And thank you all to our sponsors, particularly the Queensland Government as premier sponsor of this event. For those of you who are at the conference dinner and awards last night, there are a few with sunglasses still on in the audience. This conference is really about bringing people together to share best practice and skills, to network, to learn, to share knowledge and stories, but to have fun. We all work really hard throughout the year, and this is our chance, I think, to step out of the studio, the office, our various caves, and talk to each other, engage and share with each other, and reflect on our place in the global games industry. I wanted to make a couple of brief comments about the industry, where we've been, and what I think lies ahead. I think it's fair to say it's been an interesting year, full of change and challenge, and 2007 looks to be even more challenging as the industry continues its move through next gen amid global rationalisation and the ever-increasing expectations of game players everywhere for high-quality, really exciting game product. We've seen our local industry here in Australia continue to grow, with every medium to large size studio, both independent and off-parent owned, reporting significant growth in staff numbers. We've also seen changes at the local level, with the acquisition and closure of Ratbag by Midway in mid-December last year, and Perception closed its doors early in January. But on the positive side, 73 of the 75 staff employed by Midway Studios Australia were retained in our industry, including Chrome Studios establishing a satellite studio in South Australia, and last month Chrome also acquired Atari Melbourne House. At the same time, we've witnessed an increase in projects coming into Australia, growth in partnering and outsourcing between local companies, and many of our studios now actively looking offshore to the Asia Pacific and other regions for alliances. I want to give you all a brief update, snapshot of the Australian industry today. We've just recently completed a nationwide national industry survey with support from the Queensland and Victoria governments. And this survey tells us that our industry now employs 1,600 people nationally, and that's 60% more than 3 years ago, which is significant growth for any industry sector. Our revenues are now over $110 million per annum and growing. Our largest 8 companies account for over 80% of those revenues, and the largest 4 have revenues over $10 million per year. We're highly export focused, with the 10 largest companies more than 95% export focused, and overall industry export revenues account for over 90% of our total revenue figures. Our sector is high skill and high salary, with average wages above the national average. 85% of our studios develop their own IP, and 80% of this development is funded internally through their own cash flows. Over 90% of our companies expect to grow further and become larger and more profitable over the next 3 years. So we're attracting great people, we're working with our educational institutions to train great people, and we know we need to continue to retain and grow our talent base as we move forward. We're very proud of these achievements, but we know that there are some significant challenges ahead. We need to further grow our skills base, we need to continue to attract and grow investment, we need to build our relationships with our Asia Pacific neighbours, and we need to work even harder to produce high quality games that sell and get people excited and people want to play. We believe that the Australian industry is well placed to further grow and leverage more of the global entertainment pie. New opportunities are emerging across the full range of platforms, consoles, handheld, wireless and the online game space. And in all of these areas in Australia we have strong creative and technical talent and a proven track record in delivering world-class product. Going forward, it'll be more important than ever, I think, to aggressively pursue our industry objectives, which are by 2010 we set some goals. Firstly, to double our industry numbers to 2,000, and I think we're well on track to achieving that. In fact, I think we'll exceed that pretty comfortably. Secondly, to grow our game exports to $500 million per annum. And thirdly, to create and own more of our own locally developed IP. Coming together, I think, at conferences such as this one allow us to celebrate our achievements, to look at new ways we can work together going forward, and to remind ourselves that we all have a place in this exciting and dynamic global game industry. So I invite each and every one of you excuse me, to participate and enjoy the next 2 days. This conference is for you, and so please make sure you make the most of it. I would now like to introduce Mr. Gary Fenlon, MP, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for State Development, Employment and Industrial Relations, to formally open the conference.
Thank you very much, Evelyn Richardson, international speakers and delegates, representatives from Queensland and Australian Game Development Studios, educational service providers and institutions, ladies and gentlemen. I feel that almost ready to apologise for being one of 4 or 5 people here today who aren't dressed to industry standards. But if you've given me notice, I would gladly comply. So it's nice to see you all relaxed and enjoying. I'm very pleased to be here representing my parliamentary colleague, the Minister for State Development, Employment and Industrial Relations, John McKellar, for this inaugural Game Connect Asia Pacific Conference, and John apologises for not being able to join us today. The fact that the Game Developers Association of Australia, or GDAA, is hosting Australia's first ever conference for the Asia Pacific right here in Brisbane tells me that the Queensland Government's efforts to support the electronic games industry are indeed succeeding. The world has certainly changed since I was younger, and as a kid, seeing the main sort of electronic type activities as being things like slot cars. Who knows what slot cars are? These haven't changed that much, I hope. And also gravity-powered pinball machines. Fantastic things. What a waste of youth. That kind of thing didn't have graphic components and LED screens, of course. So 30 years ago, politicians would have scoffed at the thought of providing government support, indeed, for a growing information and communication technology sector. It was weird science. Today, ICT is one of the smart state's key growth industries, employing more than 62,000 Queenslanders across almost 4,400 businesses. In fact, ICT has been identified as a specific priority for this government, and it is a central plank in our smart state strategy for transforming Queensland's traditional crops and rocks economy into a dynamic knowledge-based economy. That's why in 2004 we launched a 4-year, $18.5 million strategy for the Queensland ICT industry. Already well advanced, this strategy embodies a series of initiatives